Now you've learned each of these techniques, and I hope you learn them one at a time the way I did, and are not going to try to attempt them all at the end, because the most exciting thing to do with color is to actually combine these techniques. If you look carefully at these sweaters, you'll see that the really exciting ones have, here's one that has intarsia, here's intarsia, and then did you notice this blue all the way across? Kay Fawcett frequently does this with his designs. He combines both intarsia and stranding technique. So when you look at a picture of something like this, or look at a sweater and say, how did someone do that? Anytime you see that color going all the way across. So how did I do that? I threaded up with this sort of peach color, and I knitted across, stopped, knitted across with the orange, stopped, across with the red, stopped, across with that, stopped. Then when I came up into my stranding row, I put all of those blue needles into holding position, and I knit across from this way, using those same colors but stopping. It's a little bit like patting your head and rubbing your tummy at the same time. That's why it's good to learn those skills individually and discreetly before you try to combine them. This is another very, very subtle combination. This is stranded, as you saw on the back of it, but it also is striped. One of the hallmarks of some of his work is this very subtle movement of stripes, and these are two twisted together, two grays, a gray and a beige, two beiges, a beige and a dark gray, and it just folds all the way up. So I actually did stripes in here. Though you can barely see them because the color changes are so subtle, that's what I was doing, is changing those stripes at the edge and then also stranding behind. This purple one down here, this is something that you can do with your vertical stripe. Here are horizontal stripes. This was a little tricky because it has a single row stripe in it. 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, and at the same time I was doing the vertical stripes, but only every other row, and it works for every other row as well. This one, obviously, is a combination of horizontal and vertical stripes. With a window pane effect is a great deal of fun, so there are two techniques there. This one is called Windsor diamonds, and it is a combination of another two techniques, of intarsia and stranding. Notice that each of these diamonds is in a large section, but it's divided by, this is kind of a gray tweed, a real interesting tweed combination. One of my choices was to make a separate bobbin for each of these color sections. Being a lazy knitter, I decided I can be able to strand over that. And in fact, I did strand behind it. I used one big turquoise bobbin, but I also had to use Rube Goldberg because the color changes were so frequent. And here's an example of long stranding. See that? They probably should be caught more frequently. But the truth of the matter is, this is the body of an adult sweater, and as long as your nose isn't too sharp, you can get it over your head without catching the strands. Besides, they're away from your nose anyway. Just don't wear earrings while you're trying to get it on. I have a couple of little samplers to show you that also combine techniques. Maybe stripes go very quickly for you, but Fair Isle takes a little bit more manipulation. This was just a little bit of playing with yarn, and notice how I used stripes and some Fair Isle technique. Just through, this is a total of 3 hours of, or 3 rows of Fair Isle. The rest is all stripes. It was very quick to do. But see, if you were to put a little stripe of that into a sleeve or into the bottom of your sweater, how pizzazzy that would be just by adding that one little section. And if this weren't such a good technique, I would not show you this ratty-tatty little piece of curly thing. This was the sample that I actually made to try out the technique. But the sweater that I designed from it was not done in these colors and was not done in this yarn. However, it combines 3 of the techniques that you've learned today. It has horizontal stripe, it has vertical stripe, and intarsia change. It was a wonderful sweater to do. It was a design that I sold at a gallery right away. And this great big window pane was filled in. Let me show you kind of what it would be on my sweater, except it was a much smaller scale. It had a blue that came over and changed all the way across, and it was asymmetrical so that the back was slightly different, and that was great fun, and it combined 3 techniques. But there is even another way to combine techniques. both color and texture. And this sampler hat was made entirely on the Bond. From the rib up, a little bit of stripe, a little bit of stranding. And what I've done here to make this real interesting section of bumps is I have done stripes, a little bit of holding position stitches, and I've also converted some of those stitches into pearls. Up here, there's stranding. This whole section is stranded. It's done in 2 rows, but when I got to the second row above, I converted it with a latch hook tool into pearls. Actually, you know, I was working from the behind and trying to design this at the same time, and this section didn't come out the way I wanted it to. It's kind of like elongated chicken pox, but it shows you the technique. Up here we have some stranding, and this is very subtle, but it's what you're going to do as your little bit of this combination of texture and color. It is colored seed stitch. It looks very intricate. It makes a real interesting band around some places, and it's deceptively easy to do. It's one of those things where people say, "How did you do that?" And you say, "Oh, hard work and ingenuity." Okay, we're going back to our frame where I have put on a couple of plain rows. I hope so that I know that I'm functioning well. And this particular technique consists of single row stripes. I'll get my second color once I have my base color going, and usually what you do is you have a base color going for a period of time, and then you introduce your second color. Let me retrieve my waste yarn. This sampler and this class is very messy in terms of yarn ends. That's okay, it's worth it because it's so much fun. I'm going to take this yarn out of the eye of the carriage, leave it threaded up though, into the fabric guide. Put your second yarn in, knit all the way across, and ordinarily if you wanted to do a row all the way across, I need to get a little more slack here. Okay, so I don't want, see that was beginning to pull on my fabric guide and it can dislodge it and cause you to make loops instead of stitches. Ordinarily you would start at an end and you would transfer each of these, every other stitch to the transfer tool, or to the latch hook tool, excuse me, and turn it into a purl. Instead, for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to do these center 10 or so stitches. I am going to arbitrarily choose a stitch. I'm going to insert the latch hook tool into the stitch on the row below, excuse me, right into this purple one. Push all the way forward, pull all the way back, and when you yank down, you just get one ladder this time. So you insert your latch hook tool. This is not only, my latch hook I'm not very good at from behind, but I was also using it in my left hand. A drop stitch. Now have I been telling you don't worry about drop stitches when they drop, you just pick them up again? I've been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. When it comes time to catching a stitch again, it's hard to poke into that little loop. So instead, what I'm going to do is go down another row where I have a full loop. I'm going to rehang that up on the needle. And I have 2 strands, and I'm going to let the bond knit it back in. Don't crawl under the frame with your latch hook tool and try to do it backwards. If it's only a few rows down and you catch it soon enough, then the bond can re-knit it for you. There you go. Let's try that one again. But I have to use my right hand. I'm going to insert this into the stitch in the row below, come all the way forward, all the way back, just like dropping off for ribbing, but this time you're just converting one stitch. Skip the next stitch. It is the nature of knits and purls, because they are such different stitches, to cause these interesting looking little bumps. Notice that you're only using one color per row, and that's why I think this is kind of magical. It looks all complex and pull that back. Okay, that's all I'm going to do now. At home you can work all the way across the row doing every other stitch that way, converting it. Then you want one purple row. This is your chance to remove that yarn from the eye of the carriage, take out your key plate, run your carriage back over so that you can pick up your first color yarn. Let's bring this in. Now this is a little bit of a logistical challenge sometimes, because Sometimes your yarn gets tangled around the fabric guide. Just make sure that it's coming in this direction and it's right under. It always wants to feed into that eye. I'm going to check that my fabric guide is on. I'm going to knit one row. And go back, and because this is seed stitch and not rib stitch, I'm going to convert the in-between rows as soon as I find one, which this is right here. The in-between stitches, I'm sorry. It's knit one, purl one, and then knit one, purl one. You convert every other stitch, but the opposite ones this time. And you can begin to see it's the same on the right side of the fabric and the wrong side of the fabric. This wonderful little complex color system emerging. Well, that's it. Those are the color techniques for today. I hope you enjoyed them, and more, I hope that you enjoy them as you're making wonderful colored sweaters. Please join me again someday in a video class, and until I see you, happy knitting.